Alright, today we're going to talk about the Xenogenesis trilogy, or Lilith's Brood, by Octavia Butler, in sort of my traditional should you read style, but also I kind of just want to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it in terms of plot spoilers, but I am going to have to talk about the general setup of this series. So what I'm going to just say at the top, in case you are someone who likes the art of discovery, is that this is a very unsettling series that is going to answer some pretty tough questions in some very uncomfortable ways. So if you're okay with that, if you're on board with that, I think you should go into it, especially if you like questions like, what does it mean to be human? What is it like to start a new species? What are the flaws of humanity? What does it mean for body autonomy and choice and consent? Like, it's definitely, that's the part where I think it's the most, like, trigger warnings is, like, the lines get very blurry in the context of this story there. And also the idea of being conquered or taken over not by a traditional oppressor, okay? Like, it's not your traditional imperialistic, I've been taken over by this species story, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to be vague. Those are definitely, like, the big questions that this series is going to cover. And the reason I'm being vague is because I know some people would love to just read Dawn and not know anything about it, because the opening of Dawn, the first book in the series, is very much our main character is waking up in this room and doesn't know what's happening. And the first third of that book is figuring out what's happening. After that, there's not really that much of that thriller, intrigue, motivating factor for the rest of the series, but in case that is something really important to you in your reading experience, I just wanted to let you know some of those things. I liked this series, did not love this series. It's not one of those 4-star Butler series for me, where I like it more because I think about it than I do the actual reading experience. I definitely didn't connect to any of the characters. It's not like it has, like, amazing descriptions of setting, but, like, the ideas that are set up for me to think about, the situations that she sets up to watch community. She's definitely doing her thing that she did in the Pattern Master series, which I have a should you read for that, if you want to look at that, especially if you don't know the reading order for the Pattern Master series. But it's a focus on community and community development, on metamorphosis and the change and development of an individual, especially metamorphosis in different species. And this one in particular focuses a lot on free will, how much of what you do or want is actually your choice, how much of it's a biological imperative. There's a lot of that in this series. So that's kind of the thematic combination of things that are going to be explored, and it's definitely your standard Butler world-building community focus, more about the ideas and giving you characters that are real enough, but they're not, like, fully fleshed out characters. Like, at least for me, this felt like Butler. This didn't feel too different from reading Pattern Master. And so these are very similar types of series, but they're focusing on different setups, I guess is what I would say. And now, what I want to get into each of these books individually, what I did and didn't like about them, what they choose to explore. That's kind of how I want to do this video. And so starting with Dawn. So now I am going to talk about the actual setup. I'm going to tell you the situation that our main character is in. And so this is called Lilith's Brood, or sometimes Xenogenesis. It depends on which book you pick up. But Lilith is our main character. She wakes up in a room. She does not know where she is, why she's there. She has some slight memories, but not a lot. And then she finds out that humanity has destroyed Earth because of nuclear fallout, presumably from a Cold War situation, because this book was written in the 80s, and that was kind of the impetus for the essential apocalypse fallout. And what happened is this alien species came and picked up the rest of humanity into their ships to save them. And this alien species requires trade, requires genetic trade. It always is upgrading itself, essentially, combining its genetic material with new species it finds. And it's not that they're forced into doing this, but they are not allowed to exist as humans in the way that we are used to anymore. That is the premise of Dawn. And Lilith is given the unenviable task of helping wake up the human race to be prepared for this kind of new situation. And it's very almost Lord of the Flies-esque at times, where you have this community and they don't trust Lilith, they don't trust each other, even though Lilith is trying to be like, this is the situation, okay? I agree, I don't like it, but this is what it is, and it's interesting seeing the camps and who forms sides with who. I will say this is my least favorite, because I think it is so focused on the human community coming to terms or not coming to terms with the new status quo of the situation and how messy that can be, okay? So I think this one, I was like, fine, it's my least favorite, 4 stars, and I really liked, in this one in particular, and it's actually throughout the series, this idea of the flaw of humanity is our intelligence and need for hierarchy. and the fact that with our intelligence, we don't notice that the need for hierarchy is our downfall, or is the thing that is always causing our problems, always going to cause our collapse. And it's this reasoning that causes this alien species to be like, you cannot just be humans anymore. We cannot allow you to exist and then cause your own demise again. It's kind of like some of the weird logic to it. This alien species is truly fascinating. I'll be vague about them, but they truly do love humans. But they also do some very not okay things, if that makes sense. Like, they are an antagonistic force, but not traditionally so, if that makes sense. And that is like one of those interesting things that I really liked latching onto as I read this series. Now, the next book, Adulthood Rites. These next two books is where I really like it because our main characters are Lilith's brood. They are her children, and her children are not going to be humans. That is, like I said, there's this trade that has to happen. And I really appreciated that both of these kids that we follow, both in Adulthood Rites and Imago, are the first of their kind. And they are a dangerous version of their kind, and that makes them other, and it makes them look at the situation from like a third-party perspective. And we're now not following an oppressor or an oppressed individual. We are following someone who, this is their community, this is their life. It's not their fault that they exist, right? And so in Adulthood Rites, we have our first male construct, is what they're called. And before that, they haven't had a human male construct because they thought those were dangerous. There's a lot of stuff here that like I have to hand wave in my mind about biology. I don't know if I always agree with the biological imperatives, the biochemical things that Butler sets up in this series. There's a lot of binary, heteronormative discussion in this series that I just don't find to be believable, but it does simplify the thought experiment. So if that was the purpose, like one of my complaints about Dawn is that all of the humans, once they're awakened, instantly try to find physical companionship among each other. And I think that's to highlight something that happened later in the book. But even if we assume everyone they woke up was heterosexual, we can't assume that everyone would actually have the same relationship to wanting physical companionship with strangers that just woke up. Like, not everyone uses that as a coping mechanism. So there's a lot of things that are used, I think, kind of as plot devices that I find kind of messy and don't always make sense in my head. But it's fine. I hand wave them away. And so the reason they think human males are more dangerous than the alien male version construct combination. And he's a very interesting bridge between the humans that are resisting and the alien race and a potential solution that forms from that, because he has great empathy for the humans. He does not agree with the alien species that made him that there was only one solution to the problem that is humanity. And so you kind of see how he learns, his perspective on his community and other communities and the solutions that come from that. I think this one's my favorite, mainly because I think this was my favorite character to follow. And also, I think it had the least amount of discomfort for me. There's some uncomfortable, like, sex stuff in this series. Just a heads up. It's not, like, open door sexy times or anything like that. It's just uncomfortable. And I'll leave it at that. If you really want to know more, ask me in the Discord. I'll tell you what happens. But it's just, like, it's uncomfortable. And it's not uncomfortable because of, like, it's kinky or anything like that. It's just uncomfortable because, like I said, body autonomy and consent, it's blurry lines in this series. Like, truly. It's truly a blurry time. And so that was less prevalent in Adulthood Rites, and I just like watching this first mixed version of this species, of this type, and the conclusions he made and the relationships he formed. And now the third one is also interesting because there's this third gender. It's not male or female, it's an it. It's not non-binary or anything like that. It's truly like this species has three genders, and this is the first human construct version of this gender. And it's considered extremely dangerous. It really expands on the world building of this alien species, which I enjoy as a world building driven reader. But it also brought back a lot of the, like, this is kind of creepy. And also just like the way it ended, I'm not sure if I understand how this species is progressing. So if you like to have your world building and thought ideas to be like not have loopholes or not be something that you can poke holes in, this might not be as fulfilling for you as like other sci-fi series, but I did actually enjoy watching how we are growing the communities and changing the mindset, because that's always been this part of this messiness. And it's the most that I've actually seen Butler focus on the transitions in her story. And there's definitely a big emphasis on metamorphosis, particularly in this third one. So those are like the things that I took away from each book. And it's one that I think is going to stay in my head. It's really interesting how this alien race and humans come together. And I actually do think it represents how messy this situation would be if we did interact with an alien species of this type and with this prerogative, with this genetic, biological drive to incorporate new genetic material within itself. And, like, it's not that they force humans to do it, but there's definitely some things that are just questionable, and I think that's intentional. But then you really do have these alien-human relationships that are quite sweet and quite comforting to each other. It's very odd. It's a very interesting view on that whole Stockholm Syndrome situation. But just know it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable series. But I think it's one of those classics that might be worth reading, understanding that it is a product of its time. I think this is the one Butler that I've read that is the most, like, this was written in the 80s, like I could place it in its time when it was written, where normally the books I read by her feel timeless. They feel like they could have been written whenever for me, essentially. Like, I don't feel that as much in her other series, but this one I definitely felt like it was more locked into the time in which it was written. I don't know if that makes sense. And people might not agree with me. That's just like my experience with it. So hopefully this helps you decide if you want to read it. If you have read it and want to talk about it with me, find me. Come find me in the Discord, because this is definitely, like every Butler, one that needs to be discussed, that needs to be thought about. Because, like, that's what she does best. She does the best at making me think about questions. Like, the idea of humans being about intelligence and hierarchy, I never thought about that, but I actually really agree with it, you know? So, like, there are just, like, such profound, simple sentences that I really like. But hopefully this video makes sense. It's very hot, so maybe it doesn't. But we're moving on. If you want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave an alien spaceship in the description. Otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.